Okay, there we go. Now it's live. Okay, so this is our podcast part two, Ravens preview. So I guess we'll just pick up where we left off from the last podcast, which was free agency. So I guess we'll just start with Robert Griffin III, since you guys want to talk about that first. So go ahead.
I'm not sure I want to talk about it. It's just the thing we got to talk about.
Well,
But okay, Al, go ahead. What do you think?
I'll jump. Well, I'll talk about the RG3 signing. I mean, the RG3 signing's low risk. I mean, 5 years ago, this guy was the rookie of the year in the NFL, with hopes that he was going to be great. I mean, 20 touchdowns, the 5 picks, had a heck of a year, and then that injury in the playoffs, he never came back and was the same. So you've got a low risk signing. You'll be able to work with him in the offseason, see what he's got, and see if he's going to make your 53-man roster. So I think it's worth it, because in terms of veteran backups, there weren't really a lot that the Ravens were going to get for cheap. They were going to have to pay anybody else that was out there. And with all of the needs that the team has, the reality is they can't take a quarterback in the first round. They need a playmaker in the first round.
All right, go ahead, Bill.
I mean, yeah, well, I definitely did not want them to take a quarterback in the first round, regardless of the signing of Robert Griffin III. If we were serious about having a legit backup, we would have Colin Kaepernick on our roster right now. We should have had him on our roster last year. I do hope that we take a quarterback, but I would not look. Maybe if one of the, whatever. I don't think it's going to happen. But if Lamar Jackson made it to the third round, I would be ecstatic to get in there. But other than that, I'm not taking a top tier quarterback in the first 3 rounds. I'm taking him in round 4, round 5.
Okay, well, I'll give you my opinion. I think they're not going to keep him. I do think they want a quarterback possibly in the first round, because there's nobody else to back up Joe Flacco. He got injured last year and was not very good the first 9 games, missed most of the preseason. They're asking this guy to literally call up their free agent wide receivers and come out and throw the football with them. I mean, I think it's kind of sad when an organization has to ask you that. So I think they are looking at a quarterback at 16. I think that could be a surprise pick if the right quarterback fell. So that's my opinion on that one. What about Michael Crabtree, John Brown? So what are your thoughts there with the upgrade of wide receiver?
I mean, I'll go for that. I like Crabtree. I mean, I think Crabtree is an upgrade for what they have. I mean, he's not a speed guy, but he can win battles at the line. He's tough. He's fiery. He's a competitive guy. So I like him. I still think they need more, but when we had the last podcast, I mean, Michael Crabtree wasn't even on the radar of a guy that anybody was really talking about, or even thought that would sign with the Ravens. So I mean, we were talking about, Sammy Watkins. I mean, the hopes that you're going to get, a Jarvis Landry or someone like that. And even, and I think even this in the emails this week, the hope that maybe you get an Odell Beckham for 2 first-round picks. But I think it's a good start. I think John Brown, if he can stay healthy and make some plays, could be good for the Ravens. But you still need somebody that can truly step in and be that star. And I think they're going to have to try to find that guy in the draft, or maybe try to make a play for Des Bryant if he gets cut after the draft.
Go ahead, Bill. And this will join in about 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm holding out hope that Cameron Meredith we're able to get him to shake loose, because he's by far the best option left. I would take him over Crabtree. I do like the Crabtree signing. I think he adds something as far as like a move of the chains type of guy. And in the red zone, he's lights out. John Brown, to me is like shot in the dark. He has the potential to be, a deep threat type of player. I don't hold out much hope that he is going to be healthy enough to be a 60 catch, whatever, 850 yard, 900 yard guy. I don't believe he has that in him. I think he's too fragile. I still, barring us being able to get Meredith, or if Des Bryant shakes loose, down the line, that's a different conversation. But, barring any other significant addition, I don't think there's any doubt that they're still in the market for probably two different wide receivers, within the first 4 or 5 rounds anyway. One guy in the first 2 or 3, definitely. So, plus a tight end in the first 3 as well. I just think, I'm glad that the franchise is basically saying, yeah, our wide receivers weren't good enough and we're not going to have any of them back, so because that is the case. So the fact that they have said it out loud and that they're just trying to do what they can do to make it better is a positive step in the right direction. But now they need to do it. Like if they go into the draft and shit the bed and they come out with 1 5th-round receiver or something, we're going to be struggling again.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll agree with you guys. I like Michael Crabtree on the team. I think he posted 900 yards last year, had 1,000 yard season, but he had a lot of touchdowns. I think he had 3 against us in one game. John Brown's pretty good when healthy. He's a pretty fast wide receiver, but neither one of them are actually number 1 wide receivers. I think they're still kind of lacking that, but the statistic I looked at was when Joe Flacco throws more than 30 passes per game, we end up losing or just suck. So these guys are actually kind of perfect for this team, the way that they like to play. So that kind of brings me to my next question, and we'll go around the horn on it, is Michael Crabtree over 1,000 yards under and over 8 touchdowns under 8 touchdowns? And I'll start with Bill first.
I think he's definitely under 1,000. I think he's probably over 8 touchdowns. So I'm looking if he works out the way that he probably should, he's going to be a 65 catch, 900 yard, 950 yard, and 8 to 10 touchdowns. That's what they want out of him. So like if everything works out right, that's what he'll get.
Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, 1,000 yards. I think he's under. I think he's under 1,000 yards. And I'm assuming this based on I think they're going to bring another wide receiver in. I think they're going to bring another wide receiver in. You'll have some guys like Chris Moore, a few of the other tight ends that he's familiar with. And I think Joe will try to go to some of that familiarity. So try to throw the ball to Chris Moore a little bit. Or try to throw the ball to Max Williams, Nick Boyle, some of those guys a little bit as well. And I think those will take some targets away from Crabtree. I'm hoping they just try to feed Crabtree and let him make some plays for him. I'd love to see him over 1,000, but I think he's under 1,000 yards, and I think he gets at least 8 touchdowns.
All right. I'm going to go over 1,000 yards actually this season, and I'm going to go with, I think, 85 receptions. I think he gets a lot this year. I think they're going to feed him the football a lot because he's a big wide receiver. John Brown, he'll be my next one. I think under 8 touchdowns, though. I think he ends up getting 7 because I think when we get into the red zone a little more often, I think we're going to end up running it or tight end. That's what I kind of think. Or some trick play because they like those trick plays with the fullbacks. All right, so that kind of brings me to my next one, which is John Brown. Over 600 yards and over 5 touchdowns. And I'll let Al go first.
I'll be honest with you. I'm hoping John Brown just stays healthy for the Ravens. If he can stay healthy and at least play, I'll say 13 games, I think he's over. I think he's over 600 yards for the year. If you see an injury pop up for him, I mean, it's going to be what it is. I mean, he hasn't played a full season, and I mean, he didn't play a full season last year. He didn't play a full season the year before, so I'm not counting on John Brown for big production this year. I think he's a great football player. He's got great speed, can make plays down the field, which is something that the Ravens need. But their ability is really the question for him. So I don't think he gets the 600 yards or 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not counting on John Brown at all. I think that the wide receiver core is going to be Michael Crabtree and whoever we get in the draft, unless we're able to get somebody to shake loose late in free agency or maybe gets cut after the draft. Something, I don't know. But no, I'm barely counting on John Brown to do anything.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to get 600 yards. I don't think he's going to get 5 touchdowns.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Oh, there's Vince. Wow.
Hey.
He comes in at the last possible second on that one. No, you can turn your camera off. Nobody wants to see your ugly mug.
Yeah, how do I do that again? Hold on. All right, there we go.
There you go. You got it.
Nobody wants that. Woo!
All right. I'll let Vince kind of quickly give his RG3 opinion.
What's
And
up,
then,
Phil?
huh?
What's going on, Vince?
What do we got? What's
Well, hold on. I'll let you chime in real quick. So RG3, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
This will be quick. I don't have much. I'm sure it's a 1-year non-guaranteed contract. I highly doubt that he's even assured a roster spot. So I think it's good. We needed a veteran. I don't think it changes our plans one bit as it relates to getting a young guy in the draft or really anything. I think it's a lot more overblown because of the name, but in the end, we needed a backup. He's a cheap veteran. We'll see what he can do.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Michael Crabtree, over under 1,000 yards, over under 8 touchdowns.
You and your stats. Has this been kicked around?
Yes. Just before you came on. You didn't miss too much.
I don't know. I'll go under on the yards and over on the touchdowns. I think he'll be a red zone threat. I think he is really an ideal fit for us as the type of receiver that we've always had success getting. A veteran who's proven himself, but has something left to prove, but maybe he'll have a chip on his shoulder with the way things happened in Oakland with, basically them kicking him to the curb to get Jordy Nelson, which I don't really understand what Oakland was doing there, but it must have been a personality thing. But I think it was a great signing. I don't know if he'll get 1,000 yards. He might get close to 1,000 yards. Again, I'm not the stat projections guy, so you know that, Rob. So
yeah, that's true.
I'll leave you to the stat projections, but I think he's a hell of an addition, and based on what was out there in free agency, it's about the best we could have hoped for.
Okay. And so now you're just caught up now. So we were doing John Brown, over under 600 yards, over under 5 touchdowns. I'll let you go, and then I'll go last. So go ahead.
Me, who we go?
Oh, John Brown, wide receiver. Do you think he gets over under 600 yards receiving, over under 5 touchdowns?
I think he crushes those totals if he's healthy. If we get 16 games from him, he'll crush those. But that's the question mark. Will you get 16 from him? He doesn't have much of a track record of being healthy all year, so we'll just have to see how that goes. But I always liked John Brown from afar. I thought he was always an intriguing guy to me, but he's one I don't want to rely on going into the season. So I don't think our work is finished by any means at the receiver position, and he is one that I kind of want to not have to rely on going into the year. So I'll go over your totals, but
all right. But
with the
he's got
caveat that he plays 16 games.
But that's why I want over under 605 touchdowns. So I'm going to go with under 600 yards, but over 5 touchdowns. I think he had 6 touchdowns, 480 yards on the season. I think he only plays about 11 games. I got crying baby, so hang on 1 second. The next topic is who are your top 5 quarterbacks in this draft? And I'll start with let's go with Bill.
I haven't really paid that much attention to the quarterbacks because I don't think we're going to take one early. But the guy that, I mean, really the guy that I would take over anybody else, and he's not necessarily the most, he doesn't have the measurables that everybody else has, but I'd take Baker Mayfield over everybody else. I just think he's the most ready to win in the NFL. He's accurate. He throws a nice ball. He goes through reads and stuff. I just think he is the least likely to bust, I guess, is the best way to say it. I don't think any of these guys are a lights out slam dunk. This guy's going to be, a player in the league. But if I had to bet on one guy that wasn't going to be out of league in 3 years or whatever, it's going to be Mayfield. But the guy that I really want us to take, and I wouldn't take him until like the 4th round or something, is Kyle Lauletta of Richmond. I think he is the guy for us. I think he can sit behind Flacco for 1 year and then possibly start if we decide to jettison Flacco if he continues to play the way that he has in the last couple of years.
Okay. Vince, let's go. Who are your top 5 quarterbacks?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I lost my hangout. Top 5. So I agreed with thoughts on Baker Mayfield. I would still go Darnold 1. I just think he definitely is as complete of a package as there is out of the quarterback class, in my view. As a NFL ready starter. The only real concern about him is he's a little turnover happy, but I think you can clean that up. I think that's not that's something that's pretty normal for young quarterbacks. So, but the guy can make all the throws. He's got all the intangibles. He would be my number 1. I'm kind of torn between Josh Rosen and Baker Mayfield as my number 2. I mean, Rosen checks the boxes of a typical NFL quarterback. He's probably the most NFL ready from just a pure passing standpoint, but he gives off a weird vibe, man. I mean, he's a unique personality, so he's not going to be for everybody, but and you also have to worry about his durability. He was definitely injured a lot in UCLA, couple concussions, I think. So he's got a little bit of baggage, but he brings kind of the full package. Baker Mayfield is the one, I agree, that is somewhat flying under the radar a little bit, I think, at least. I think the dude is he's not getting the recognition as a pocket passer that he really deserves. A lot of that's because of the offense Oklahoma runs that spread. So a lot of people kind of knock him for not having that pro style. But I see a lot of Russell Wilson in his game. I mean, from just a size, a movement perspective, being able to make plays with his arm outside of the pocket, not necessarily his, more arm than feet. So I like him a lot. My question marks are definitely Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen is as boom or bust as it gets. I mean, bottom line for me is, he could be bagging groceries in 2 years, or he could be a Pro Bowler. So I think it's insane talking about him in the top 10. He interests me a lot as a second round quarterback, but this top 10 talk for him is crazy. And I just don't know that Lamar Jackson, there's a lot to work with there, but I'm just not sure that he's an accurate enough passer to be successful in the league. He could prove me wrong, but his profile, I think it's going to be a struggle for him early, and you're going to need to tailor an offense around him, and you're going to need a creative enough offensive mind to build a playbook to fit his strengths. And, unfortunately, there aren't that many creative offensive minds in the NFL. So to me, it's about where he ends up will determine his success. If he can get with those few offensive minds that are creative enough to build an offense that fits his skill set, he can definitely be a successful quarterback. But if he goes to the wrong team, which I would say is probably 2/3 of the league, that is going to try to put him in a cookie cutter NFL offense, that won't work for him. So he comes with a lot of, we'll see where he ends up, and that'll be an indication of where he goes. The other one I'll mention, your boy Rob Mason Rudolph. I think he's another one that interests me for the Ravens as a second or third rounder, but once you start talking first rounder for him, I'm kind of out on him in the first round. I think he's a developmental guy, but he certainly has some tools to work with, but to me, he's not a first rounder.
Okay, go ahead, Al. Your top 5.
All right, so for me the top 5, I think you can take your pick between, I guess, Darnold and Rosen. With Darnold, you don't have the same injury concerns that you have with Josh Rosen. So I like Sam Darnold if I'm sitting at number 1, and I want to take a quarterback like I think Cleveland should, and have him sit behind Tyrod Taylor. I'm gonna go with Sam Darnold. Josh Rosen's my second quarterback, not by much, because I like Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield's a winner. He's shown he can win at Oklahoma. He's passionate about the game. So you hope he can kind of keep it all together and not kind of go the Johnny Manziel route, but really just kind of go out and get on a team and win. But I think Baker Mayfield's really kind of right there as a number 3 quarterback. And then for me, Josh Allen isn't in my top 5. I just don't believe in the hype of Josh Allen. I think the hype train's kind of got behind him, but the production in college is not there, and I don't think you can blame it solely on his team, because I think Lamar Jackson had great production, and they weren't putting out great receivers in Louisville. I like Lamar Jackson as my 4th, and then I take Mason Rudolph as the 5th quarterback. If I'm picking in the first round and I'm picking quarterbacks, I'd only take Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield, and then really everybody else is kind of a second round and on.
All right, guess it's my turn. I get to shake it up a little. All right, so my top 5. Most of you already know this. I like Mason Rudolph. Particular reason why is over 65% completion rate, increase in yardage every year, increase in touchdowns. I like his footwork. I like the way he looks down the field. Now, he could use some work and accuracy, I'll agree with that, but I do like him as the number one overall quarterback. So me and Mr. Bill over there have a bet. You have until the draft to let me know, but I think Mason will be number one. Number two, I'm going to give it a little shocker, Baker Mayfield. I agree. I think if Baker Mayfield even got the 16, we would take him no matter what. Number three, Lamar Jackson. I like him a lot. Same way I like Deshaun Watson from last year. Uses his feet. He's a playmaker. If he gets to 16, I would say the Ravens should definitely draft him as well. They could use somebody who can just shake things up, especially at the quarterback position. Number four, I got Josh Rosen from UCLA. And then number five, Sam Donald. But I wouldn't draft Sam at all. No USC quarterback has ever done well in the NFL. So I'm done with that dude. I would not draft him. Allen, I can agree with. But he's going to be a late first. He would be a late first-round pick no matter what in this draft. All six of these quarterbacks are going to go in the first round. And then most of them are going to be gone, if not gone by 15. That's how many teams are going after these guys. And I've heard the Patriots, the Steelers, the Saints really, really like Mason Rudolph a lot. So I think that speaks a lot to those teams that are looking at him. So those are my top five. So I guess let's move on to the press conference today. Let's stick to the Ravens. So thoughts. I want to go around the horn. Everyone wants to go first. Any thoughts on the press conference, and what would your takeaways?
I didn't really listen to it, and I mean I don't really listen to that draft press conference. I mean, they're not telling you anything that you don't already know. They told you. I mean, Ozzie said how great RG3 looked in a workout, and what else are they really going to tell you that you don't know? They're still addressing the wide receiver position. That's obvious. You're not going to hear about Cameron Meredith or Willie Snead until the April 20th deadline for the sign restricted guys. So the liar's luncheon is just what it is. We're gonna tell you all this stuff really that you already know, and we're gonna lie to you about a few other things for the direction that we're not going.
All right. Vince, Bill, who wants to go next?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I just, I was disappointed in the questions that were asked today. I didn't really think they got into the draft too much. I mean, they were just I don't even know. There was just not a lot of information today. Most of it was about Ozzie's feelings heading into the last draft. So who gives a shit what his feelings are? I'm trying to find out about the draft. But the thing that I like normally about that press conference, and the reason I look forward to it, is you're not going to get them to say, oh, we like this guy over this guy, or we like this guy over this guy. But a lot of the times, especially Joe Ortiz, if they ask a question about prospects, he will go down a list of guys and say this guy is whatever and has this thing, and there was none of those questions today, basically. I think there was, if I remember right, there was one question about the tight ends, and he just basically said, oh, yeah, there's a lot of guys, and that was it. And so there was almost no information in the press conference today. In general, in years past, I've felt, even though they don't, it's not like you're going to get any information about, oh, I think they're going to draft this guy. Like they don't give that kind of information away. But I feel like in general, usually there's a lot of information about the prospects, regardless of whether they're lying to you about how much they like them or whatever. Usually I feel like I come out of there with a better sense of, this guy does this well and this guy doesn't. And there was none of that today. So I was irritated with the media, the questions that were asked in the press conference. I don't know. You're not getting, a lot of insider information out of it, but I normally do feel as though it was worthwhile to listen to and find out about what they think about, position groups. And there was almost none of that information today. So it was disappointing.
Yeah, I would agree, Bill. I thought the questions were pretty ludicrous. I feel like the media kind of packed it in, knowing that they usually don't get much during these pressers. I never really this press conference never really did much for me anyway. I think they'll never tip their hand, as you guys have all pointed out. But I think for me, you see the takeaways from the media, and it's like, I think the big thing they hung their hat on is, the Ozzy comment about, oh, you'll be surprised who we take at 16, and trying to read into that, or if we even take somebody at 16, something to that effect. And I think right now they are definitely feeling like they want to make. My gut feeling coming out was that my gut tells me we're not picking at 16. I think we're gonna try like heck to either move up or move back, depending on the situation. I just, it just seems to me like there's going to be a lot of movement in, trying to get these quarterbacks. Certainly, I think we're trying to set up some sort of smokescreen as if we're going to be interested in a quarterback at 16. I still think that's a pipe dream that in no way, shape, or form will happen. But you still hear some people trying to connect the dots. I guess at the end of the day, I didn't hear anything that really was that earth-shattering. There wasn't really much prospect talk. I think there was a tight end question. DJ Moore, I think, got a shout-out at one point, being the Maryland guy. But, I don't know what you ever get from those press conferences, but I do agree that this one was even worse than usual because of the whole, hey, Ozzy, what's it like your last draft? And it's like, I'm like, how many different ways can we ask this stupid question that nobody cares about? Disappointing, but I don't have much expectations for those pressers anyway, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, I thought one of the surprises was the Robert Griffin III signing. But yeah, through the press conference, they didn't give out a lot of information. I know they're trying to keep things tight-lipped or what. The Robert Griffin III signing kind of now feels like they're trying to give John Harbaugh every chance to win this season without an excuse. Like, Joe Flacco gets hurt, you have Robert Griffin III.
You think signing Robert Griffin III means they're trying to win this year? Come on, man. If they were trying to win this year, Colin Kaepernick would be on the team right now.
You can't sign that guy because fans hate him at this city, and they didn't address that issue in the press conference I heard of. But let's keep it real. They signed him for, I think, to say, hey, at least there's no excuse. If he goes down, you have a more than capable backup. I'm just saying they're trying to give John Harbaugh every chance to win this season. So with that being said, go ahead.
Let's be honest. If Robert Griffin hits the field this year, we're not winning a damn thing. So I'll tell you that right now. So you could say all you want about that not being an excuse, but you don't want to hear this, Rob. But at the end of the day, we will go as far as Joe takes us in 2018.
No, hang on. I'm just saying, if he goes out for 4 games, 6 games, they're going to say instead of having what was his Ryan Mallett, whatever the dude's name was, he sucked. You have Robert Griffin III. You have a more than capable backup. I'm just saying is they're giving him every chance.
I don't agree with that statement at all. Robert Griffin is garbage, man. I mean, he didn't play last year. He did not. He was not in the league last year. He is garbage. If his name wasn't a Robert Griffin III, no one would care.
How's this, Rob? I'll lay you an Outback lunch that he's not even on the 53.
No, I don't think so because I don't want him on the 53. So I'm just saying, I think they're just saying that as an excuse. I think they're going to draft a quarterback. But I guess let's go ahead and move into exactly that. So a lot of Ravens fans are probably complaining, but let's start with the first one. Do you trade for Odell Beckham? Do you give up 2 first-round picks for this dude? I'll start with Bill because you shook your head, so go ahead.
Definitely. 2 first. I would not sign Odell Beckham to a $20 million contract if I didn't have to give up 2 first-round picks. There's 0% chance that I would give up 2 first-round picks for him, much less sign him to the contract he wants.
Okay, so that's a no from you. All right, Al?
Yeah, no. I mean, he wants too much money. I mean, and the Ravens just can't afford it. They can't afford to have two guys on the roster that are making $20 million a year. It's just not feasible to have that much of your cap tied up into two guys. So he's a great dynamic player, but keep your picks and hope that you hit on a receiver in the draft.
All right, Vincent.
Yeah, not much to add to that. 2 first rounders plus a long-term deal is too rich for my blood. And I don't even know that he's a good personality fit for us. He's not the type of receiver we like. Not to say, part of me says, we need an alpha receiver. So, don't get me wrong. If the price were right, I'm in on him. But the price is not right here.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees with the cap situation is not realistic anyways. All right, so New England moves up and gets the 23rd and the 31st pick. Any chance does anyone think that New England's going to try to trade the 16 with us and we go back to either 23 or 31?
It all depends on how the board lays out. It depends on who's there. I mean, and I don't think anybody knows what New England's doing. The rumors are they're going to try to trade for Odell Beckham. They're going to try to trade up and try to get one of the quarterbacks in the draft. I think Ozzie hopes somebody wants to blow him away and trade up, but I think the Ravens need to look at trading up themselves and give up some picks to try to maybe get one of these guys you think is a surefire Pro Bowler.
Okay, well, you can build on that. So who would you trade up for?
There's a lot of guys in this draft I would trade up for.
All right, give us 1 or 2 names that you would trade up for, and how far up would you trade?
I mean, the unrealistic guys, of course, are Saquon Barkley. You're not getting him. I think the Ravens are going to get a good player where they've got a pick. I mean,
well, you just said they might be try to trade up. So who would you trade up for?
They may. I mean, if their goal is to get a receiver and Ridley's been productive, if he starts to fall, I mean, I don't know. I may move a couple spots and just try to get him. I've only got to move one or two spots to get him, but I still think the Ravens can get a good wide receiver at 16. If somebody falls out of that top 10, like Denzel Ward, I'm trading up to get that guy. That guy's a beast.
Okay. What about Edmonds, the middle linebacker? You going to trade up for him?
No, because I like Roquan Smith better.
Okay. Well, you give me a name, then I'll give you a name. All right. So, Bill, would you trade with New England or would you try to trade up?
I guess it depends on the target. I don't know. If I was going to try to trade up for anybody, the only player I would try to move up, because let me say this: you're not getting Saquon Barkley, because that's who I would want if I was going to trade up. That's who I would want, but you're not getting him. So you can't trade up to number 4 or whatever. That's as far as he's going to drop. So realistically, the only guy that I would trade up to get would be Quentin Nelson, the guard from Notre Dame. That's the only guy that I would feel like you wouldn't have to move up. Maybe 10. I don't know if he's like, the way they're talking about him, you can just start stitching his gold jacket right now, but like he's still a guard. He's still a guard. So many players that were excellent guards did not go in the top 10, didn't even go in the top 20. So he's a player. I don't feel like there's very much of a chance of him making it to us at 16, but I would not be surprised if he was still there at 10. And if that was the case, I might start to think about making phone calls if I didn't have to give up too much. My preference across the board is to trade back. So yeah, I would definitely be interested in trading back to New England at 23. If I was able to get that done, I would look to trade back again to like 26 or 28 or something like that. Because I don't know, we need picks in the first 3 rounds. It was devastating to our draft class to not get that 3rd round pick for Ricky Wagner. And the fact that we didn't get it, it puts a damper on the draft prospects, only having one pick in each round of the first three. So my preference is to trade back. I'm not sure that New England is going to want to trade up in any way. I just think that they traded for Brandon Cooks, and they thought they'd be able to sign him, and he wanted more money than they were willing to give. And so because Bill Belichick is great at the draft and great at personnel stuff, he's like, well, I traded the 32nd pick to get him, and I just traded him for the 23rd pick. So, I got a 1,000-yard season out of him and moved up in the draft. So, that's Belichick. So, no, in general, I would not be interested in trading up for almost anybody. And because of what you have to give up, we need all three of those first three picks. And, honestly, we need like two more in the first three rounds. So yeah, I would be looking to trade back for sure.
What if Fitzpatrick falls to 8 or 9, maybe 10, 11? Would you trade up for him?
No.
Nope. What position would he play? What position does he play, Rob?
Got him under safety. He can play safety. I heard some say he can even play slot, I think.
I'm not trading into the top 10 to get a slot corner.
When I watch him, his future is as an outside corner. That's where his value is going to be. He played that kind of joker star position at Alabama where you kind of move everywhere. He played slot corner, safety, linebacker. But when I watched him, I love the guy. But no, I'm not trading up. I guess to move back here.
Well, I was getting that with the Bill just to throw one to him, but now it's your turn, Vince. Go ahead. So would you trade back 23 to 31, or would you trade up? And if you do trade up, who are you trading up for?
I'm definitely in the trade back camp. Trading up, the only scenario that I would endorse a trade up, and it's a very minor scenario, but, I think there's going to be, Calvin Ridley is still my target if we're at 16. I don't care about some of the sour, about his testing. When you watch the tape on him, the amount of separation he gets, dude reminds me of like Marvin Harrison. He's like a carbon copy of Marvin Harrison. He's a little slightly built. He's not electric. He's not an alpha target that's going to, go up and win jump balls, but he's going to run every route in the tree. He's going to separate. He's going to get you yards after the catch, and he's going to be a consistent number one receiver in this league for many years. So I think he is such an ideal fit for us as to what we need, somebody who can separate and be a reliable target for Joe. He is kind of, I went back and forth on him, and then I soured a little bit, but then I watched the tape again. I'm back to all in on him. My only scenario is I'm worried about, because Dallas tends to do this to us all the time, I'm worried about Dallas jumping us for him. They are definitely in play for a receiver because I think the writing's on the wall with Dez. And I could see sort of like a defensive move up the boards, a couple picks to kind of preempt any move that Dallas does. But that's kind of a real thin scenario that I don't really envision happening. Outside of that, I don't think you make a good living trading up for off the ball linebackers and guards. And those would be the ones that would intrigue me the most. I love Roquan Smith. I love Quentin Nelson, but you're talking an off-the-ball linebacker and a guard. I just don't see value in trading up for those positions. Those are not positions that typically warrant that type of draft capital. And to Bill's point, we need picks. So, if Ridley's off the board, I am squarely in the camp of we need to move back any means necessary almost. I just don't see another great fit for us at 16 based on how the board is going to shake out. So, I see some value in the back end of the first round. I think with, some of the receivers, DJ Moore, the tight end, Dallas Goedert, I think would be a great trade back target around the late first round area. So I'm definitely even at that point, I'll take a tackle, Mike Galinsky, which people are mocking him to us at 16. I hate him at 16. I'm fine with him at 28. So I just feel like it's a weird year because everyone's going to be trying to move up for the quarterbacks, and the top talent in this draft is at positions that are usually not highly coveted, like safeties, guards, off-the-ball linebackers. These are not usually guys that warrant top 15 picks, but they happen to be the most talented players in this draft besides, the quarterback position. So I think it's going to be a weird year. I think there's going to be a lot of movement. But yeah, I'm definitely more move back instead of move up.
All right, and let's just give you your scenario. So if you're at 10 and Josh Rosen is there, you trade up for him. That's for Vince. That's
a no.
That's a no. No for Josh Rosen. He gets in 10 or 11.
No, if you draft Josh, I mean, you're going to launch me into my quarterback.
I know.
If you draft Josh Rosen, you're basically writing Joe's ticket out of town. So to me, it's okay. If you're doing that, then you are punting this year, and you are basically saying we're starting all over, but you didn't do anything this offseason to start over, meaning you should have if that was the plan, then pull the plug now on, and obviously you may have to wait for draft day. So maybe there is some far-fetched scenario where that happens, but you're basically sending a signal to your organization that we're starting over. If you were to move up and draft a quarterback, that's what you're saying.
Okay. I'm just asking the question. The guy happened to get there. Would you trade up for him? That's all I was asking.
Yep,
all right. So I guess I get the answer to the question now. So I agree with everyone. I'd rather trade back to 23 and then see if New England wants to come up from 31 to 23 or 28, like Bill said. I'd much rather go back there. I think the player I would target going back there probably would be an offensive tackle, because if they can fix the offensive line, that helps Joe Flacco. That helps the run game. That helps the wide receiver. It helps everybody. So I like the idea of trading back and getting more picks. The only person I would trade up for is Edmonds, the linebacker out of Virginia Tech. If he happens to get to 12, 11, maybe even like 13, and somehow he's still on the board right there with Washington or something, or even Green Bay. Green Bay, I think, would take him. Or if he got there near Washington, we got near the Bills or Miami, and they weren't going to take him, I would trade up for him, because if we had another linebacker on this team that's just as good as CJ Mosley, that could attack, that would make that defense a lot better. And as we know, last year we had a lot of problems with the middle linebacker covering some tight ends who happened to get open on us and kick our butts. So I would trade up for Edmonds. He'd be the only guy, unless Baker Mayfield somehow dropped down, and I don't see that happening. Or Barkley, as everybody else said, but Edmonds could drop, so I would go after him. All right. Keeping in the spirit of the draft, who is a favorite second round or third round pick you guys like in this draft a little bit deeper? Is there anybody you're just like, we got to get this guy in the second or third round that can help this team? And I'll open the floor up. Everyone wants to go first. Anybody in the second or third round you like a lot that you want?
Yeah, for me, there's two guys that I would really like to see on the team. And I don't know if I don't really know who's going to go where, whether it's going to be second, third, or a couple of, I think Gesicki has a chance of going in the first round late, depending on how much you love him. I think he's a terrific player. He's definitely not a tight end. He is a big wide receiver. He's Ed McCaffrey. He's a 6'5" version of Ed McCaffrey. That's what he is. And, I would be happy to get that player in the second round if we were able to. But yeah, the two guys, Gesicki is one from Penn State, and Michael Gallup, the wide receiver from Colorado State, is the other. Get out of here. Shower. And so those are the two guys that I think would be in the second and third rounds, who are players that have the potential to add a great component to the passing game.
Nice. Okay, Al.
Yeah, the second round. See, the second round for me really just depends on what the Ravens do in the first round. If they go wide receiver, like I'd love to see them trade back and get DJ Moore. I like DJ Moore to the Ravens. So in the second round, the running back from USC, and I'm drawing a blank on him. Ronald Jones. I wouldn't be opposed to taking him. And I know that's kind of a stretch. I think in the second round they may take a defensive player in the second round, because I think they need to try to find someone to play next to C.J. Mosley. I just don't know who that guy is, and that's why I like Roquan Smith so much in the first round. So then you can potentially take like a Michael Gallup, the wide receiver, in the second round. I wouldn't be opposed to those two picks in round one and round two, because you get a receiver in the second round, and then you get a linebacker you get your linebacker in the first round that can really kind of help shore up that defense that gave up some big plays at the end of games last year to lose some games for them.
Okay, Vince.
Yeah. So a little dependent on where we ultimately go in the first round. If assuming we get a skill guy in the first round, which is what I want. I'm looking offensive line. This guy might sneak into the first round, but if Billy Price is available in the second round, he is an immediate starting center for us. I love the guy. I think, that would be tremendous value for us and an immediate starter. So he would be one I'm looking at. Bill, we brought up Gesicki. He worries me a little bit. I agree with your comments totally about him not being a tight end. When I watched him on tape, he had no even willingness to want to block. He's definitely a weapon, and he definitely is athletic, but man, I get worried about guys that really don't show it in college. And, he didn't show a whole lot at Penn State. I mean, he was not, he didn't put up real big numbers, and their offense was the Saquon Barkley show. So, he definitely has huge upside, but I worry about him as a potential bust. If any of the tight ends were to slip out of the first round, like Dallas Goedert or Hayden Hurst, those would be amazing second round picks. And then, the names I'll give you at receiver, if we don't end up going receiver in round one, Anthony Miller, the kid from Memphis, is, I think, our type of player. I really like his attitude and the way his toughness out there. I think he can be a great option for us. And then one guy that's kind of flying under the radar, but I think has probably one of the highest upsides of any receiver in this draft is whatever you say is the Equanimous St. Brown, the Notre Dame kid. Receiver. Yeah. Huge guy. Wasn't terribly productive, but he was dealing with some bad quarterback play last year. The year before, he had a real nice year. He's definitely a deep threat. He definitely has some bust potential, but I think he can be a number one receiver in this league. And I like him more than like a DJ Shark, who I think is kind of like Ted Ginn light at this point. But he's one I would look at as a second or third rounder that could have upside as a number one receiver.
Let me jump in real quick. Anthony Miller is actually my favorite receiver in the draft, but the injury that he had in the last game of Memphis's last year was a Jones fracture of the foot, and that's one of the most difficult to heal fractures that you can get. It's got an enormously high incident of re-injury for that kind of injury, so that it makes me very concerned about relying on him in any way. I love him as a player, love him. But if a guy's got a foot injury that's not going to heal right, I don't think I can take him before like the third round.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Jones fracture is tricky, especially if you don't get it repaired right the first time, you often need that second surgery, which can end up being a red shirt. But I think there's a point in time where his value will. And maybe that pushes him into the third round. And at some point, I think his value will offset that risk.
Okay. Second round, I think it's Josie Jewell, right, Bill? I think you kind of sent me that player. He's a linebacker at Iowa. He's pretty.
I wouldn't take him in the second round. I like him. I wouldn't take him in the second round.
I don't think he gets into the third. I don't think he does. But if he's in the third, even better. Take him in the third round. I think I like Nick Chubb, running back in the second round. I like Rashad Penny, running back. Al, you were mentioning Ronald Jones the second. That's a USC running back. I like another running back on this team because I don't think we're good enough at running back. And Joe Flacco, again, plays better when we have a strong run game, and he's not throwing the football more than 30 attempts per game. So I like a running back in the second round. Wide receiver, I like Michael Gallup. I don't know if I really like anybody else really in the second round wide receiver wise. I mean, if Christian Kirk kind of fell down there, I would take him absolutely. Deion Kane out of Clemson in the third round would be a nice wide receiver as well. He's pretty good. Maybe a center in the third round if one kind of pops in there. I would probably grab one of those guys, but it sounds like most of us are going offensive line or offense still. I haven't heard a lot of defensive players in the second or third rounds. Anybody like any defensive players down there? Cornerback? Anybody else they like defensively second, third round?
In the second round for me, I'm just still looking to try to fix the offense.
Okay.
I won't be surprised if Ozzie takes a defensive player in the first round. That's just my opinion. We've seen it for the last couple of years where great inside linebackers fall in the draft, and I like Roquan Smith. The Ravens need somebody that can cover next to CJ Mosley. I think CJ Mosley can captain the defense, get guys in the right spot. He can cover, but he's not all that you need in today's NFL to be a cover guy back there. So I wouldn't be shocked if Ozzie takes a defensive player, and I wouldn't be upset if he takes a defensive player. But part of me feels like they're going to try to go offense to try to get fans in the seats. And with the new rule change, with the helmet piece, I mean, offensive players have the advantage. So the Ravens need to go get some playmakers on offense that can take advantage of the rules and take advantage of the defense.
But wouldn't you think Lamar Jackson, if he got to 16, is that an exciting offensive player for his team? So wouldn't you kind of do that?
He is, but to Vince's point, I mean, you're paying Joe Flacco $20 million. He's not going anywhere for the next 2 years. So you've got next year that you can draft a quarterback and bring him in and let him sit behind Joe Flacco.
Yeah, but next year you could cut Joe Flacco and save $18.5 million against the cap.
Yeah, but the savings wouldn't be 18.5. The savings is only 10.5 because you got dead money kicking in.
Yeah.
Okay, so you still get 10.5. I'm just saying.
I don't think they're cutting him. I don't think they're cutting him next year. I mean, just listen to Bashadi's comments. I mean, they're sticking behind him.
Yeah.
And if they have to hire a new coach, they're not hiring a new coach and going out and looking for a new quarterback at the same time. That'll be a train wreck.
But they did it in 2008.
We had this discussion last time.
Yeah.
I don't think the franchise feels about Flacco the way that everybody else does. Yeah. I honestly don't think they do. Like they believe that they've got a franchise guy. Now, I don't know what Joe Flacco would look like if he had, Julio Jones and whatever, Antonio Brown as a number 2 option or something. I don't know what he looks like if he's got those 2 guys because we've never given him those 2 guys. So, if we go out and we draft a guy in the first round, whatever, we get DJ Moore at 23 and back it up with Michael Gallup in the second round and back that up with Mike Gesicki in the third round, I don't know what our offense looks like because he's never had that kind of talent before. But if we get the same Flacco that's been playing for the last 5 years, since we won the Super Bowl, he has been mediocre at best. And,
for 2014,
I'm just saying, if we're not serious about giving Flacco every opportunity to succeed, if we go into the draft and take, I wouldn't be upset with Roquan Smith in the first. If we traded up for Roquan Smith, I think he's an outstanding player. But that, trading up is going to take more than just the 16th pick. We got to give up something else to get up to get him. And if we come out of Thursday and Friday night of the draft with Roquan Smith and nothing else, what do we got? We got the same thing that we had last year, except with even less talent at the wide receiver position.
See, Roquan Smith, I think, will be there when they pick at 16.
I think you're out of your mind if you think that.
I think he's probably going to be there. I mean, look at some of the other productive inside linebackers that fell to those picks: C.J. Mosley, Ryan Shazier, Dante Hightower. I mean, it's to Vince's point. Those linebackers that aren't rushing the quarterback, that don't touch the quarterback, they're not as in high demand as pass rushers. You've got 2 pass rushers, Davenport and Nick Chubb, in the top 16. There's somebody else is going to get pushed up the board in terms of pass rusher. I think it's very realistic to have 3 quarterbacks get picked in the top 15. And I think receivers are going to get pushed up the board too. Don't be surprised if Ridley or DJ Moore gets picked in the top 15. I mean, nobody thought John Ross was going in the top 10 last year, and he played receiver for 1 year.
Yeah, so I don't disagree, Al. I mean, from a traditional draft standpoint, off the ball linebackers tend to be pushed down the board, whereas the positions you're talking about get pushed up. But I just, unless everyone's just wrong, I don't know that that's where the value is this year. But yeah, I mean, to the earlier question, and the whole Lamar Jackson thing or whatever, quarterback, I mean, I don't want to rehash that again. The only thing I'll say about Lamar Jackson again is, I mean, you want to waste a talent. I mean, put Lamar Jackson with Marty Morningweg's offense if you want to see talent being wasted. There is just no way we have the type of offensive minds in our building and the type of offensive philosophy in our building that would allow Lamar Jackson to be a successful quarterback. And he needs to be in a very specific offense, in a very specific system that is tailored 100% to his skill set, or he will not be successful.
Robert Griffin III, isn't he the same skill set?
But you're not.
Maybe coming out of the draft, Robert Griffin III. But again, if you think we're signing Robert Griffin the third and are going to change our offense in any way, shape, or form to match his skill set, it's crazy. And at this point, with the knee injuries, I mean, again, I think at any moment that is wasted talking about RG3 is just a waste of time. But you know, we are not. He is not what RG3 is. Call him Bob. I don't know. He's not RG3 anymore. Call him Bobby, because he's just a shell of himself at this point.
Okay, I'm just saying he has the same skill set, and we signed him, so that's all I'm trying to put out there as a point.
I mean, Lamar Jackson is somebody that he's not an accurate passer. I mean, he's gonna be on and off. I mean, sometimes he's gonna be hot and look like the best quarterback ever, and when he's gonna be bad, he's gonna be bad. And you can't put him into a West Coast offense where he needs to be a little accurate and expect him to thrive. I mean, he's not the pick for the Ravens at 16. He's going to be on the board when the Ravens pick at 16, and they're not picking him. I mean, we've kicked around a lot of different picks, but the one pick that's gotten mocked to the Ravens a lot, it's pretty much, I think, Vince's pick, is Calvin Ridley. I mean, Ridley's produced every year at Alabama. I mean, there's something that has to be said to production and really playing against great talent every week for the most part.
Not to mention the fact that he's got a garbage quarterback. Jalen Hurts can barely throw the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I watched pretty much every tape that's out there on the internet of him. It was embarrassing, the level of quarterback play that he was dealing with. But you could see almost virtually every snap how his first step, his ability to get off the ball and separate. I mean, it's truly something you don't see in a receiver coming out of college very often. Very often they need time to refine those kind of skills to be able to get off the ball, to not slow down coming out of your cuts, to be able to transition fluidly. You know, a lot of these guys, they run great times, but then you pop the tape in and they play a lot slower than their time speed. And Ridley's almost the polar opposite of that. And I just, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess his evaluation went wrong when he tested poorly, and then people started questioning his age. You know, he's going to be 24. And then they just started to poke holes. But, you know, I'm wondering if we get closer to the draft that people start to revert back to the tape and he'll start to kind of rise again, or maybe it was just a perceived fall, and maybe I'm getting my hopes up and he's still going to be a top 10 pick. I don't know, but
So,
yeah, I mean,
let me ask you a question then. If we get Ridley at 16, does that change anybody's over/under for Crabtree and Brown?
No.
No.
For Brown, almost certainly. I mean, I think Brown is a complimentary piece at that point. I mean, I still think Crabtree is the de facto number one until Ridley would take that number one. I mean, you're never gonna have a rookie, but if any rookie could come in and be a number one receiver, I think this guy could. But he'll probably start as the number two. I think Crabtree will still be the guy. But very quickly, Calvin Ridley will be the guy.
Al?
I mean, I like Calvin Ridley. I mean, when you look at his highlights, he's got some amazing catches on tape. I mean, he can catch the football. He plays fast. I mean, there's too many guys that we've seen test well at the combine that haven't done well at the NFL level. So there's something that has to be said about production. I hope the Ravens can get Ridley at 16. I don't know why his draft stock has fallen. I mean, the combine is one thing, but this guy has great body control. He can catch. He runs fast in game. He's got great in game speed. So I hope he's the pick for the Ravens in the first round. And in terms of the over under, it definitely takes John Brown's numbers down because I do think they're going to draft a tight end in this draft as well. I don't think it really impacts Crabtree because Crabtree at the end of the day is going to be your possession guy. And the hope is if they ever do have a passing camp, Crabtree's going to be going to develop some chemistry, hopefully, with Joe Flacco. And I think once he does, Joe Flacco is going to try to force the ball into Crabtree quite a bit.
Yeah, but then when they need to go to passing camp, something he needs to kind of publicly get his butt out there and say, "Yeah, let's do it." I would think.
I mean, the team now is kind of putting the pressure on him a little bit, and the team's putting the pressure on him. I mean, get out there with your new wide receivers and throw the football around a little bit outside of just training camp, mini camp. You got to do something with these guys. So when you get ready for the preseason, you're familiar with your wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, if he was the league MVP and playing lights out every year, then I wouldn't worry about it. But he's not. And, you got to try to do something to get better. And the fact that he's so nonchalant about it and, we don't really need to do that and we'll be fine. We got all the mini camps and OTAs and blah, blah, blah. Like, that doesn't work. When you play like crap, you better start doing stuff you didn't do before to try to get better. Otherwise, you're just getting worse. We're paying we're paying him a top of the market type deal for the middle of the road production, and that's not going to work.
Yeah, I'll tell you, previous years I rolled my eyes at the whole, he doesn't do the passing camps with the receivers. And yeah, I always thought it was a bunch of garbage and a bunch of noise that, ultimately guys running around in shorts catching footballs, and to a degree, I still think it's overblown, but just from a perception standpoint, at the very least, he's got to do something. He's got to show that he's putting in some extra work, because it's put up or shut up time for him. I mean, this is very clearly a crossroads type year for him. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for it this year. I don't know how much real value it is. I think it's way overblown, the real value of it, but just for the perception of it, he's got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, at least have the decency to be embarrassed, Yeah. I mean, he's stealing money from the franchise and doing nothing to show that he is trying to earn it.
Yeah.
Well, didn't he do that in 2011? He took Anquan Bolden, I think it was Derek Mason. They all went out and threw together, and he played a lot better with them 2011, 2012. So there's something there to him doing it. And a side note, Amari Cooper, when he came into the Raiders, had 1,153 yards and 5 touchdowns. Crabtree had 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. So I think if you're right, we do get Ridley at 16. I think he helps Crabtree's numbers.
Yeah,
definitely hurts John Brown.
What's everybody think about the receiver from Texas A&M, Christian Kirk? It seems like his draft stock's fallen quite a bit.
For me, I know what he is. So the round 1 talk was crazy for me because he's a slot guy and a return man. Yeah. I think he can be a good slot guy and return man. So I don't think anything's really changed about him other than, his value settling in at what he really is. So, if you're talking round 2, I'm in. I mean, I think he's a nice player. I think he has a very high ceiling or a high floor. I mean, I think his ceiling is pretty limited. I don't think he'll ever be a star receiver in the league. I think he's kind of a known quantity, and that can be good in the middle rounds, but I'd like to think you're aiming a little higher for a round 1 receiver.
Yeah, I couldn't even take him in round 2. I mean, because I can't stand another Kamale Correa, Sergio Kindle, any of these guys that the Ravens have taken in the second round and just bust from day one.
Well, I mean, to me, his bust potential is pretty low. That's the one thing I'll say about him. I mean, I don't think he'll be a bust. I just don't think I don't think his ceiling is that of a top flight receiver or even a top number 2 receiver.
And that's what I think. I just think the Ravens in the first 2 rounds got to get 2 guys that can make an impact on the team right now.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. I got the opponents up, so I'm going to ask this question. So we have the Steelers, the Browns, the Bengals, of course. Then we have at home Denver, New Orleans, Oakland, Tampa Bay, Buffalo. So with the team as it is now, how do you feel about those home games? And then the away games are Atlanta, Carolina, Kansas City, the LA Chargers, and the Tennessee Titans. That's a tough schedule. That's every team on there is good.
Yep.
So what do they have to do, I guess? How do you feel with the team as it is now pre-draft? How many games do you think they're really going to be in it with this team as it is right now?
The team as it is right now, they're picking in the top 10 next year.
All right. Vince?
I can't believe we're getting into scheduled talk and predictions this early.
How do you feel? Do you think we're picking?
How do you
feel?
You know how that gets me. You know how that gets me.
I know. But I'm just asking, how do you feel? It's a tough schedule, that's all I'm saying. With the team as it is now, are we good enough to win enough games? That's the question.
Look, I'm of the mindset that we are not nearly as far off as most fans think we are. So it's hard to say. It's a tough schedule, but those things are so tough to evaluate this early on. Hell, last year we had quarterbacks going down left and right, and we ended up playing 8 backup quarterbacks where, going into the year, you would have told me that Green Bay game, for example, would have been the hardest game of our schedule, and all of a sudden we're rolling into Lambeau Field and shutting out Brett Hundley. So, I don't get into a lot of the schedule talk and opponents until preseason. I'm more focused about us right now. So
that's what I'm saying. How do you feel? Or do you think we're competitive enough with those guys? Are we competitive enough to win enough games against those teams? That's the question. As the team is now.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, I think sometimes we just need to take a step back and have a little perspective here that, we are nobody wants to hear this, but we were a 4th and 12 and a Antonio Brown stretch with 2 seconds left away from potentially being in the playoffs the last 2 years. So nobody wants to hear that. And everyone wants to think that the sky is falling, but that's the truth of the matter. We have a lot of work to do to even get back to that position, but we made some good first steps in free agency. We definitely need to do more at receiver. I think the offensive line, we'll see how, what we can do there. I think we're taking a bit of a leap of faith with James Hurst, but I feel like tackle is one of those positions that we tend to always solve late in the process. We tend to always pick up an Austin Howard, what's his face? McKinney, we picked up late one year. The guy from Cincinnati and Willie Anderson, I think 1 year. We always seem to kind of solve the tackle position. But, we definitely center is one to watch. I mean, That's why I'm kind of high on targeting a center early in this draft that we can plug and play and be our starting center, because I think that's an underrated position on the offensive line that we have a pretty big hole. And Matt Skura, that can't be the answer right now. So yeah, and the defense, I think the defense with another year and with Wink, I really am very interested to see what they can do. I think they can take another step forward. The $1 million question is Joe, and his progression, and we're gonna go as far as he takes us. But I guess my bottom line right now is we are not nearly as far away as most of the fans think we are.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bill.
I'm not, it doesn't trying to figure out if we're good enough to compete right now with the team we have is pointless, because we're not going to be playing with the team we have right now in September. I think we're going to have at least 2, if not 3, sort of top of the draft type players on the offensive side of the ball. And, if we do our job correctly, John Brown will be the number 3 wide receiver going into the year, or the number 4, preferably. And, it's just it's going to be a different team than we have right now. We have the team. We're never going to be, a 2-win team. It's just never going to happen. Even if Flacco went down, I think our, just the team around us is good enough to beat the crap teams in the league enough to get 5 or 6 wins. And so, I don't know what anybody's going to look like, come the start of the year. The teams that we think, might be good right now maybe aren't so good, when it comes right down to it. You mentioned the Chargers being a good team. I don't really think the Chargers are that good of a team. I don't see it, with a number of the teams. So, as far as what our matchups look like and all that stuff going in the league, I'm not ready to talk about that yet. I just think we need to do everything we can to try to put Flacco into the best position possible. He's never going to be a guy that you can put the whole team on his back and he's going to take you wherever it goes. Although he did do that in the Super Bowl run, but we haven't seen it before or since. And so, I would not count on it. But if we give Flacco 2 or 3 more weapons in the passing game, and, we're able to fix the tackle spot. People talk about James Hurst as the right tackle. I don't think Hurst is going to play right tackle. I think they signed Hurst as a sort of, insurance policy against Marshall Yanda being hurt again. He's had injuries, has been nicked up the last couple years, and Hurst has played well at guard. And if you look at Hurst's contract, I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it was less than $5 million a year, if I remember right, or right at $5 million a year. And, all you got to do is look at the guard contracts across the league to know that that's a good contract for a starting guard. And Hurst played well at guard. So if Alex Lewis moves out to right tackle, if Yanda is hurt again, whatever, we've got Hurst as a starting guard for less than $5 million a year over the next 4, and that's a good contract as far as I'm concerned, because I do believe that he's going to be playing guard at some point, if not this year, in the very near future, because Yanda's not going to play that many more years.
All right.
Yeah, I think ideally he's not the starting right tackle. I think Harbaugh, I don't know if you guys caught his press conference at the owners' meetings, which, if you guys haven't, that press conference is infinitely more valuable than that Liars luncheon today. So it's an hour press conference. It's definitely, but it's worth your time if you haven't listened to it yet.
Yeah, I watched it. I thought, this is my thought on it. What's he supposed to say? Is he supposed to be like, yeah, we've got nobody to play right tackle, we're fucked, and if Skura is playing center for us when the season starts, Joe Flacco is going to be in intensive care by week 3. Like you can't, he's got to be like, oh yeah, Skura is looking pretty good at center, he's got a shot, and James Hurst is definitely the right tackle. That's what he's got to say.
Oh yeah. No doubt.
If it ends up having to be that way, he can't have shit talked his own players at a press conference and then be like, "Oh, sorry, I thought for sure we'd get somebody in the draft, but we didn't, so it's going to be Hurst."
Yeah, no doubt. The interesting thing that I picked out of that, not that he was talking up those guys because that's what he's going to do, but that it was almost immediate. There was no real thought given to what I originally thought was going to be Hurst staying at guard and kicking Alex Lewis out to right tackle. It seems like the lean is they really want Alex Lewis to be that left guard. And, Hurst will get the first crack at right tackle, knowing that we will bring somebody in undoubtedly, I think. I just thought that was interesting because when we initially signed Hurst, my read was, well, okay, so he'll be the guard, and then we'll kick Alex Lewis out to right tackle, and we got something here. But when Alex Lewis came up, the interesting position that came up for him was center, and that they were actually thinking about him as a possibility at center, which I thought was really interesting. But I just brought that up to say that I think they're pretty clear on Hurst being that swing guy, ideally, but if all else fails, I think he'll be the right tackle. But I don't think that's the plan. I really hope not.
Well, here's what
but to me, if that's why I want a center. Like, give me a Billy Price, or even the guy. I mean, I think the guy from Iowa, Daniels, might be a first rounder. We'll see, but. If you can get a bona fide center in this draft, I think all the other pieces fit into place. You have Alex Lewis at left guard. You go get yourself a veteran right tackle. We always do that. I mean, like I brought up the names that we've gotten late. I mean, I think one year McKinney we signed like a week before the season started. I think
after we started,
was it after? Yeah, yeah. And then Austin Howard we got very late, so we tend to always find a right tackle. Somebody gets cut, something happens, right? So I'm not worried about that. I think we'll solve for that. I still think center is a big question mark for us. I don't. Matt Skura is Harbaugh can talk him up all he wants, but he is not the answer. No. I don't think. I think you're diminishing Alex Lewis's value if you entertain him at center. So I think if you get a plug and play center in this draft, and then you have at least those 4 positions solidified, and then you have Hurst, and then whoever we bring in at right tackle. I think you have yourself a nice line.
All right. Well, looking at the schedule, going back to that for a second, I think there's one thing I did notice, and that's I think that this Ravens team could run on these teams and really wind down the clock. So for me, I could agree with you guys. If you're going to go Flacco, you go wide receiver 1, but running back, I think is to me has to be a top priority. They get someone who can dominate. I like Alex Collins. Don't get me wrong. He did well, and over the course of 16 games, he probably would have gotten 1,200 yards. I still think they need another running back on this team to dominate, to really be like the focus point of this offense. Because, again, you got to mention Joe Flacco and throwing. But Scott Quisenberry could be an interesting center in the 3rd round. Go ahead, Al.
So where are you taking a running back then, Rob? Second round?
1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round. I would do it.
So just to throw it out there, because I know the Ravens are thinking it. I mean, are you okay with Alex Collins, Buck Allen, and then Kenneth Dixon? Kenneth Dixon, I guess, if he's ready to go.
See, that's my point. Is I don't feel comfortable with that group 100%. I think adding another running back is a good idea. somebody like a Penny again, Rashad Penny, Ronald Jones the second. I think it's Darius out of LSU. He's a good running back. I would add one of those guys.
At the top of the kid from LSU is probably going to get picked at the top of the second round. I think Barkley's a sure lock for the really the top 5.
I think Geis might even be a first rounder, to be honest.
That's his name, Geis. Yeah,
that
they're
dude
talking about him late in the first round. I've seen him get mocked to Pittsburgh. So he's definitely a later. I mean, he's been mocked at the back end of the first round. I think Chubb and a lot of those guys are going to be second round picks.
I like Nick Chubb as well. I think he's a pretty good running back. Sonny Michel, those guys. I think he needs another running back.
For running back, if the value presents itself in the draft, then sure. But I'm not going into the draft saying we have to draft a running back. I'm still squarely aboard the Kenny Dixon train. I still think he can be a really productive back in this league, both running and receiving. Obviously last year was just derailed, just snake bitten from the start with the PED and then the injury and all that. So, you kind of toss last year out the window, and if he can at least come back and prove that last year is behind him, then I'm ready to roll. I think Buck Allen showed that he can be a capable core special teamer and third down type back. Obviously not someone you want to rely on, but as a depth piece, I'm fine with Buck. And then Alex Collins, I mean, why not, dude? I mean, he showed he can be a featured back. So again, if there's value there, I'm all for it. I'm not reaching, or I'm not my sense of urgency is not very high to get a running back. I'll put it that way.
I'll go one step further. I don't think we need a running back. I mean, I think my love for Saquon Barkley is well documented. So I would definitely take him if we had a shot at him, but we're not going to have a shot at him. And I wouldn't take another running back in the first 3 rounds. The value's not there. The need is not there. We just don't need it. I know Rob is focused on, being the I don't even know, the power stealers of the of the early 90s or something, but that's not football anymore. That's not the way you win games anymore. I mean,
how do you win them?
The passing game. What do you mean? How do you win them? You got to get a passing game. If we are reliant upon 3 yards and a cloud of dust, we're going to lose every game we play 21-13.
Well, I'm asking you a question, okay? Because you say it's the passing game. The more Joe Flacco passes, the worse he gets. That's correct. Then you need to upgrade quarterback.
I think you've fallen into the trap of I don't remember the phrase, but whatever, the causality does not equal whatever. You know what I'm talking about. The games you're looking at where we shit the bed because Flacco threw the ball 50 yards 50 times are because we were already behind, because we were already getting our asses kicked, and Flacco had to throw the ball to get back in the game. Like that.
Bill, I'm giving you a round of applause because I don't know how many times I've had this conversation with Rob that I think it's a correlation is not causation.
You're much smarter than I am. I couldn't think of the phrase.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, you will always look back and say, yeah, we were so imbalanced that game, but to say that's why we lost is the most absurd argument that fans make all the time, and it drives me up a wall. Whereas it is the nature of the game flow that dictated the run-pass ratio. So there's no secret that, to me, the running game is how you salt away games, but you get leads and you dominate based on explosive plays. Now, you can get explosive plays out of the run game, but there are a very few amount of running backs in this league that have that type of ability to make explosive plays that truly make themselves a difference maker. And if you're talking this draft, that's obviously Saquon Barkley. I'm not sure who else. I like this guy's kid. I think he could be, but I don't see a fit for us where we're picking for him. I don't think he'll be there in round 2. But yeah, I think the running game is always it's gotten to the point where it is slightly underrated, because I still think at the end of the day you need the ability when game flow dictates to be able to salt games away with the running game, and that's still going to be part of our identity, but you separate yourself with explosive plays in the league these days. That is what separates yourself. And so my bottom line is you need explosive plays. That's what we're missing. Now, that can come in the running game, but it's a lot easier to have that happen in the passing game. And the way the rules are set up, it's set up to make it happen in the passing game.
Well, let me throw a stat out for everyone real quickly. In the past 3 years, Joe Flacco is the worst play action quarterback in the National Football League. The worst. The worst. So, Al, any comments on that?
By what stat? By what measure are you making that statement?
His 78.9 passer rating on play action plays is the worst among quarterbacks with at least 850 passing attempts.
And what span is that over, Rob?
The last 3 years.
So here's what you got to remember with that, Rob. We've been running play action with Morningweg, with bad offensive coordinators that when we weren't running the football. I mean, when Terrence West was in there, how many yards was he getting per carry? I mean, they weren't running the football, so play action doesn't help you if you're not getting some of those big chunk plays as a running team. It helped with Alex Collins coming in last year and really taking over, but I don't think that's a great stat, because play action, you got to be able to run the football for play action to work.
That's true, and that's why I recommend us getting another running back.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I think Alex Collins is a very capable runner. I am probably squarely in the minority on this, but I still think Kenneth Dixon's a stud. Like, if not for all the other things that make you not able to count on him, I'd be counting on him, but, and I think Buck Allen is a very good third back, like for a number 3, he's terrific. He had almost 50 catches last year as a part-time player.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, with running back, the only type of running back I'm interested in would be the alpha, elite of the elite running back that can be a true home run hitter and difference maker. So to me, it's like, okay, yeah, Saquon Barkley, sure. But to just grab another running back that can be another piece, yeah, I mean, if the value's there, but I think we have enough of those type of pieces. We could use an explosive player as a running back. So, if we have an opportunity for a home run hitter, maybe, but again, I just don't see much urgency in it. I think we have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to take anybody at running back, it's going to be a pure third down back. It's going to be a pass catcher, a smaller guy that could be like a scat back, slot wide receiver, split him out wide. That's the type of player that if I was going to take somebody, it would be that type of player. But I'm not looking to take him unless there's somebody that we have, I don't know, whatever, ranked in the second. Like, oh, he's a second round pick on our board, and we got him in the 5th. Yeah, that's what they said. That's what they said about Kenneth Dixon. Like we took him in the 4th, or maybe it was even the 5th. I can't remember. I think he was 4. I think he was
4th.
Yeah, it was 4th. But yeah, that's what they said about Kenneth Dixon. The value was so good that we couldn't pass him. We passed on him in the 3rd, and we couldn't pass on him anymore.
Yeah, essentially what you're saying is you're looking for what we thought we had in Woodhead, right? I mean, I think that's the only type of back that I would be interested in. Somebody who could play that Woodhead role. But honestly, I think Kenny Dixon can play that role a little bit. I think he can be that guy. I really do.
I still think need an upgraded quarterback. I'll keep saying that until we get to the quarterback. So this quarterback, get a better quarterback. Guy ranked 32nd last year in the National Football League. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, but that problem's not going to get fixed by drafting another running back, man.
No. I said quarterback.
Yeah, I heard what you said. I'm saying the problem at quarterback will not be solved by drafting a running back.
And our bottom line, I think everyone agrees we need better quarterback play. I think where the disagreement might be is when and how do we address that? I think the necessity of the reality of our situation right now, based on his contract, is we have to ride or die with Joe and do whatever it takes to put him in the best position to succeed. Now it could end up not working out, and then, we're talking about blowing it all up. But, I think the way this organization is structured right now, it is still squarely a Joe Flacco-led organization. For better or worse, as much as fans want to whine about it and long for the upgrade, and I'll just say, just remember back to those dark years when we were Stoney casing it for a while, and you tell me how that is. The grass isn't always greener, I'll tell you that.
And that's the opportunity of drafting a guy and giving him a chance to play. You don't have to cut Flacco. You can still keep Flacco next year. But if you take a look at, again, I'll put out the Eagles situation. I know they're glad they had Nick Foles back there. Look at Green Bay. I'm pretty sure they were disappointed in Brett Hurley or Hartley, whatever the guy's name is. They lost. They had to bring Aaron Rodgers back. I'm saying the backup quarterback position is extremely important. I think you need to start grooming a guy to come in because he is getting hurt. Last year back. So
yeah, I mean, no doubt. I think RG3 will not be the end of us looking at quarterback. I'm all for drafting a mid-round developmental guy. I think somebody mentioned Kyle Lauletta at one point. There's the kid from what's his name? The Washington State one. He had a real bad year last year, but he's another. Luke Falk, I think he's another interesting one. He didn't have that bad of a year, but he's another one that has put up some numbers and could be a developmental guy. I'm all for that. I think you need to start thinking about it, but it's just where are you going to put your precious resources? And that first round pick needs to be somebody that can help us win this year.
Yeah, I mean, we're stuck with Flacco for this year at least and probably next year. So you've got to do whatever you can do to get the best out of Flacco that you can get. And that means building a brick wall up front on the offensive line and giving him guys to throw the ball to. And, and if you do that and he still shits the bed, 4 or 5 games a year and still, sort of half-asses it his way through the rest of the games and pulls out 8-8 or 9-7 or whatever, then you're never going to get anything better because look at all the things we did to make him, perform at the top of his game, and he still didn't do it. So, for this year, just, get as many offensive players as you can and hope for the best. And if it's still exactly the same this year, you have to look at replacing Flacco the following year. And if you're still at the point where you can't cut him because he makes whatever, and it's going to be $10 million in dead money or whatever it is, then, you draft a guy that is going to be like, you may not say it out loud, but that's going to be your guy in a year from now, and just be done with it.
All right, Al. Yep. Al, still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Go ahead, Al.
Oh, sorry. Hold on.
Well, as you hold on for a second, I'm just going to bring up an example real quick. Is Tony Banks, Trent Dilfer? I'm pretty sure you guys are glad we got Trent Dilfer.
Man, yeah. I could have been playing quarterback and won the Super Bowl with that defense. Come on. All Trent Dilfer did was hand the ball off to Jamal.
Yeah.
That pass in the Super Bowl.
That was a different lifetime. I mean, that was a different world back then, football-wise.
Well, you were in high school, but the rest of us were out. But
football's all about the passing game now, Rob. I'm back. Football's all about the passing game now. I mean, you got to be able to throw the football down the field. Flacco's not going anywhere. So
all I'm trying to say, Al, is over 30 attempts, the guy ends up losing us football games. He has a run game. He's under 30 attempts. We win football games. So I'm trying to say to you is if it's all about the passing game, then you have to upgrade the position of quarterback. You should be drafting a guy this year.
It's not all the quarterback. I mean, sometimes you need receivers that can take the football and make a play out of it. I mean,
yep.
Roethlisberger doesn't make a play. Roethlisberger doesn't make a play every time. I mean, Antonio Brown goes out there and makes plays. Le'Veon Bell goes out there. Look at that catch that Le'Veon Bell had in the end zone in that Jacksonville game. They lost that game, but they came back because guys came out and made plays for them. And the Ravens just need guys that can make a play. That can if Joe Flacco throws the football up there, that can make a big catch. If Joe Flacco throws a 5-yard slant, that can take it to the house like Odell Beckham did in that game against the Ravens when they beat us on a 90-yard touchdown or whatever crazy it was on a quick slant. I don't know. I don't put it all on Flacco. I think some of it's Marty Morningweg. I think some of it's just Perriman didn't pan out to be the guy that they wanted him to be. Mike Wallace isn't a number one receiver. He's a complimentary receiver. I mean, Chris Moore just isn't a starter yet in the NFL. So Flacco doesn't have anyone that can make plays. When Steve Smith came, Flacco had a guy that could make a play.
Derek Mason,
Anquan Boldin. Those guys could make plays. Those guys make catches to make up for if the quarterback throws a bad pass. Those guys could go get the football anyway. That's what the Ravens need. They don't have it on the roster right now. Maybe Michael Crabtree will be that guy, but
yeah, I mean Crabtree's great at the sideline catches, the 7-yard comeback. He's great at all that stuff. He's going to be our move the chains guy. He's going to be our red zone target. He's a terrific player for what he does. He's not a vertical guy. He's never going to be a vertical guy. And so, if we don't get, I want to say one, but we need two. If we don't get two guys that are able to make plays down the field, where it's going to be the same as always.
I feel like if they can get Calvin Ridley, I mean Calvin Ridley's shown at least at the collegiate level that he can make plays. If you can get Calvin Ridley in the first round, I think he helps because then you're looking at, okay, we got Michael Crabtree, we've got Calvin Ridley, maybe Chris Moore can step up. He made some plays last year, just not consistently. And then I don't know, and then maybe Brashad Perriman finally gets it. I mean, you hope he does, but I'm not counting on it.
Yeah, well, at least you're in a position now at that point where you have nothing tied to Brashad Perriman in terms of your success, and it
exactly
him just putting up or shutting up, and if he doesn't, then we can move on and cut bait. But yeah, I mean, maybe, who knows? I mean, maybe you bring in a guy like Calvin Ridley and that lights a fire under him, and all of a sudden we see a different player, and he can be that vertical threat. And he wouldn't be a starter, but maybe he's that third or fourth receiver that can get down the field. I still think Chris Moore has something there that you can develop, but again, I think part of it has to do with we need to develop some of these guys. And I think that's part of it is, we haven't been able to develop a receiver. So, I think coaching is a part of that as well. So the bottom line is I think Calvin Ridley is a game changer where it puts everything else gets put into its proper place. You have Crabtree as your number 2 possession. John Brown is your number 3, slot guy. Then you have Chris Moore and Brashad Perriman as depth pieces with upside that can actually provide, maybe, some ceiling for you if you have an injury or something like that. Everything else falls into place. But I think the one thing that we probably haven't given enough airtime to is we need a pass catching tight end. We need a guy that can get down the seams. We also need, it is not a secret that Flacco loves throwing to the tight ends. He uses them as security blankets, sometimes to a fault with the Pitta situation where, he seemed to lock in on him way too much. But we need a tight end. And, looking at the draft, there's some decent tight ends at the top, but it doesn't look like a terribly great year for tight ends. So I'm hoping that we can get one of these guys in the first couple rounds, because after that you're kind of mulling around in crapshoot land with the rest of those tight ends. So if not, then we're going to have to attack it some other way, either via a trade or second wave of free agency. But almost at this point, especially if we were to draft a Calvin Ridley or something, tight end needs to be higher up on our urgency list, because, you can't go into the year with Max Boyle. They're pretty much the same person, so you might as well call him Max Boyle. But you can't go into the year with, Boyle and Max Williams as your options there.
But
which is really sad. I mean, it's really sad to say that. It's sad to say that. The bottom line is sooner or later we have to hit on skill position players. We have missed on so many guys. It's like embarrassing.
Yep.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap this thing up here. So I guess I'll just roll it around. Any final thoughts? Because our next one is going to be your own personal mock draft. We'll get Bernie on here, I guess. And we'll do over our mock drafts 1 through 32. And our final thoughts before the draft on April 23rd. So what do you want to see between now and then? Anyone we should be looking at, or anything you think will pop up, any signings they'll do? Let's do a final thought.
Well, I'll give my final thought. I mean, if Meredith, the wide receiver from Chicago, if he's healthy, and you've checked him out and you think he looks good, I mean, I'd offer him a contract. I think it's going to be tough for the Ravens to pry him away from Chicago. I think Snead would be a lot easier because Chicago's got $31 million in cap space, and they're probably going to keep Cameron Meredith. But I wouldn't mind seeing the Ravens go after one of these restricted guys. I mean, Snead's a season removed from having a huge year. Meredith's coming off of an injury, but he's shown some and flashed some potential. So if tight end may be the way that you want to go in the draft to try to finally find a tight end, then I think they've got to do something from the receiver perspective before the draft, or pick up the phone and call the Cowboys and see what's the deal with Dez Bryant, and maybe you can get him for a late round or conditional late round pick. Or something like that. But I think the Ravens are moving in the right direction. They're moving slow. but they're moving in the right direction. They've signed some receivers that the fans can be excited about. They've just got to continue to build on it.
All right, go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, I mean, for me, final thoughts. I mean, at this point, I'm squarely in draft mode. I don't think, I think we've brought the guys in for visits and kicked the tires. I think that's doing our due diligence for kind of that second wave of free agency post draft. Keep in mind that every time after the draft, there's always those surprise cuts based on, who teams drafted, and now they have surpluses at positions. There can even be some trades that are made post draft. So to me, it's, I think you hit on it, Al. Dez is definitely a situation to monitor still. But none of these guys excite me to the point where I feel like I want to pigeonhole myself into offering them a contract only to, get into a position where maybe there's a guy after the draft I would have rather had if I waited. So at this point, I'm pretty much ready to just wind down and focus on the draft, and then kind of let's see where we're at post draft, and kind of use that second wave of free agency to fill in any holes, whether it be a right tackle, whether it be maybe another receiver if we don't end up drafting, a Ridley at the top. Certainly tight end, is probably going to be a huge key. Even if we draft somebody, I think a veteran tight end is probably wise at some point. So, I'm kind of just in wait and see mode. I think they've done their homework, so they can be ready for what happens post draft. But to me, it's let's get into the draft. Let's focus on nailing these first 3 picks and finally hitting on some skill position guys, because that is going to make or break our season.
All right, go ahead, Bill.
The only thing I'd like to see before the season starts is Cameron Meredith signing with the Ravens. I mean, I don't think it's going to take a very carefully crafted contract to get him away from Chicago. We will have to pay more than they want to pay him in order to get him. I'd still be on board with that, especially a large first-year payment. But it's going to have to be – they're going to have to overpay to get him. I think it might be worth it to do so. But that's the only thing pre-draft that I'm interested in. I don't really want Willie Snead. I don't really care about Dez Bryant. If he was a shake loose, I'd definitely have the conversation. But at this point, I don't think he offers anything more than Crabtree does, and he would come at a steeper price. So, I'm fully into the draft mode, and we'll see how it goes.
All right, I guess for my final thought is I would like to see them bring in a few more wide receivers, tight ends. I agree with. We definitely need someone who can catch it. I would be intrigued if they did draft 2 tight ends like they tried before with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez, because we did try to draft both those guys. But if they kind of ran a 2 tight end offense with these wide receivers, I think I feel a little more confident. I guess overall, guess I'm ready for the draft, so that's about it. I can't wait. So.
Yeah, one last thing. I thought I was interested. I just saw today that the receiver from Nebraska, DeMornay Pearson-L, was in the building today, and I was happy to see that. Not because I think Pearson-L is anything in particularly great, but he's a return specialist, and that makes me hopeful that they have recognized the fact that they need an electric returner.
Kristen Kirk could be an interesting returner if he did make it to the second round. All right, well, that's it. I guess we'll see. We'll do this again on April 23rd. That's a Monday, a few days before the draft. And then we'll actually have our mock drafts ready. Cool?
All right.
Cool. All right, thank you, everybody.
I'm going to be worthless in regards to a mock draft, man. I don't pay attention to what other teams need.
Yeah, that's okay. We're trying to get to the Ravens, right? But I am interested in other teams because the Browns are looking pretty good. Maybe we'll have AFC North a little more in-depth discussion next time too.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right, gentlemen.